Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about Ceres in the 12th house in a natal chart. Now, Ceres in astrology can be associated with how one may nurture and care for others. It may also indicate how one may desire to be nurtured and cared for. Now, given we're talking about houses, it's more of the sector of life where this energy may be injected into. Now, given this is the 12th house, this could be about nurturing and caring those that are less fortunate than yourself, such as the impoverished, the homeless, the hungry. It could be those that are mentally ill. This could be also where you may nurture and care. It could be an aunt or an uncle, and even people that may be hospitalized. I mean, if this, say, is in the zodiac sign Cancer, it might be done with a lot of unequivocal love and a lot of dedication and devotion and tenacity. Now, also, too, it might also be something for this person that he or she may have experienced some limitations and restrictions in terms of being nurtured and cared for, or may feel inhibited in expressing their nurturing ability and caring for others. I have this in Aries in my chart, so it's basically, I think how it manifests with me, it's just a lot of I nurture and care through my actions and through standing up for those sometimes that can't defend themselves, such as the weak or the more passive people. But at the same time, I would have to say that I think I've had some limitations and restrictions in terms of expressing my nurturing ability and being nurtured and cared for. And also, this could be tied into one's secret sorrows as well, in terms of maybe the lack of some nurturing and caring energy. Now, also, too, Ceres in astrology can be connected with dissipated or depleted self-worth or self-esteem. And given that this is the 12th house, it could be due to general limitations and restrictions. It might be through some situations with hidden adversaries. And say if this is in Aries, it could have been people that you thought you knew well, but the situation all of a sudden became very contentious and they became very combative unexpectedly, and turned out somebody that you thought you knew actually became an enemy. And say if it's an Aquarius, it could have been a friend that might have turned out to be somebody that was actually an adversary in disguise. It could also be in some cases attributed to a mental illness. In some isolated cases, if you have other elements in your chart that conferred, say for example, Mercury really strongly adversely aspected, as an example. In any way, and it could also be tied in with one's secret sorrows. It could be about people that might have experienced a depleted or dissipated self-worth or self-esteem, but maybe bear those sorrows in secret. Now, Ceres in astrology can also be connected with eating issues or disorders associated with food and eating. Now, given this is the 12th house, this could be something that people that have this place and they keep this very hidden. It could be something that they carry very secretively and tied into the sorrows that are concealed. And in a lot of cases, this may manifest in some sleeping issues. Now, eating disorders may be tied into that anyway, but they could be more emphasized with this, and the vitality may be depleted very strongly as well, since we are talking about the 12th house. Say if this is in Taurus, it could be a very persistent, as an example, eating issue, but eating issues are not very common, so this could be isolated. And it might even impact your relationship or connection with an aunt or uncle, and may even require hospitalization. So anyway, well, Ceres in astrology can also be associated with raising children. Now, if you are a parent and you are raising children, you may raise them in some situation where they're somewhat isolated or secluded to some degree, or there might be some restriction or limitation in connection with that. Again, I have Ceres in my 12th house in my natal chart, and I have no children. I have not raised any children. I also have Pluto in my 5th house intercepted in a this is, and so there are other indicators for this for me, but it could also be where you raise them, if you have any children, to take care of and help those that are less fortunate than yourself, and also maybe through spirituality as well, to be spiritual, or maybe to have some belief in things that are connected with the metaphysical, such as astrology. Now, it could also be about, raising. I mean, the 12th house is also connected with fears, so it might be, or maybe in some cases, raising children might even put one in a state of fear or trepidation. But also, the 12th house is also about, or sacrificing, self-sacrificing. So, say if this is an Aquarius, it could be a person that might raise their children to show altruism toward others, and really, and also be very and also be able to sacrifice as well. So anyway, now Ceres in astrology can also be associated with about being taken against one's will, forcibly taken against one's will, being coerced to go somewhere against one's will. In other words, connected with kidnappings and abductions. So, and of course, abductions and kidnappings can be very isolated, but at the same time, if it were to occur, it might be, in some cases, it would be tied in maybe to a clandestine affair. It might be done through in solitude or seclusion. And say if this is in Scorpio, maybe very surreptitiously, as an example. It might be something that might play a role in your fears. It might be something that you might fear more so than the average person, because the 12th house is associated with fear. It could also be tied into one's restrictions or limitations. Some isolated cases, if this does happen, it might be maybe contribute to a mental illness, like say, like if there's something like PTSD, if that is something that is considered a mental illness, the post-traumatic stress disorder. Say if this is in Scorpio, again, it could be something that could maintain maybe some really power over the person, sadly, as well. Now, Ceres in astrology can also be associated with family connections. Now, given that this is the 12th house, it may be one that might be very dissipated, really dissolved. I have this in my 12th house, and my family connection is not exactly robust or very strong right now. It could be also, too, where there may be some limitations and restrictions in the family association, and it might be also tied into one's secret sorrows and things that people will just bear in solitude and be despondent about privately, and not really open up to many people about. But it could also be a family connection that might be tied into self-sacrificing energy. But it may also be where you might feel isolated from your family in some cases, but it could also be about, again, given this is the 12th house of Pisces, where you show that where there's a lot of compassionate energy, a lot of self-sacrificing energy, and a lot of idealism in connection with it, being able to overlook, transgressions of others, and perhaps even be encouraged to help those that are less fortunate than yourself. I mean, so anyway, and say if this is in Capricorn, that could add to maybe some coldness or callous energy in connection with the family, where you might see them as being rather cold and callous, and you might see the relationship somewhat dissipated as well. Now, Ceres in astrology can also be associated with dejection, sorrow, and disappointment. And given that this is the 12th house, this may be tied in to perhaps some limitations or restrictions that this person has to endure. It might have been dealing with hidden adversaries. It might be people that they thought they were friends, and they wound up turning on them. Say this is in Pisces as an example. It might be due to some kind of betrayal or deception or duplicity. It might even be connected with imprisonment. Say if this is an Aries, it could be due to some volatile or violent crime, and the person may not really want to talk about it that much outwardly to other people. In some cases, too, it might even be tied into a mental illness in some isolated cases as well, and just general limitations and restrictions that this person may have to endure. So anyway, Well, Ceres in astrology can also be associated with protection and protective energy. Now, given that we're talking about the 12th house, it could be where you show this energy perhaps toward people that are less fortunate than yourself, such as the impoverished, the oppressed, the homeless, people that may have a mental illness, people that may be hospitalized, or and even in some cases it might even be people that are in prison. It might be a person that may work as like a security guard for a prison in some isolated cases. And also you might be a person that might be more strongly requiring protection from hidden adversaries. I mean, whether it might be going online, say if you have this in Aquarius, you may be requiring more protection than the average person from some cyber thieves in some cases, taking the precautions necessary to not have your personal information being taken. As an example, it might even be over a clandestine affair in some cases. Hold on a moment, people. Say if this is in Gemini, it might be a variety of clandestine affairs. But anyway, the next thing up, as far as Ceres goes in astrology, can also be associated with clothing. Now, if you have this in the 12th house in your natal chart, there might be some limitations and restrictions in this. Again, not to be redundant, but I have Ceres in my 12th house in my natal chart, and I have a number of restrictions in terms of my clothing that I have. I don't have an overabundance of clothing. A lot of it is due to going here, going there. But anyway, also, you may be somebody that often donates your clothing to charity, or you might find yourself getting clothing that was donated through charity. It may be some cases it might even be a hidden enemy or hidden adversary that might actually be helping you, that somebody is just might be someone that turns out to be an enemy later on, but acts like they're your friend and does so through by helping you in terms of clothing. Say if this is in Leo as an example, it might be done where somebody spends extravagantly on clothes for you. And really or spends an extravagant amount of money on your clothes. Or it could also be too where you might be tied into wearing clothing that's connected with spirituality or the metaphysical. 12th house is also associated with filmography, so it could be something that you might maybe you might do some videos and maybe flaunting the clothes you wear, or you might be doing maybe some advertising through the videos as well, as far as clothing goes, if you are in some kind of business associated with clothing, such as selling or designing clothes. Now, Ceres in astrology can also be connected with what one may obliterate in order to restore what one may have previously had. Now, given that this is the 12th house as an example, some people may eradicate maybe a connection with somebody that was less fortunate than themselves, such as somebody that's impoverished, homeless, hungry, or disabled, and maybe to restore maybe a mental health situation or care for them in terms of their mental health, or even a situation with an aunt or an uncle. Say if this was in Leo as an example, and maybe somebody that might put an end to generously helping somebody that was less fortunate than themselves, to take care of maybe what they say is maybe a dominating, so to speak, mental illness that might be feels like it's dominating their existence, as an example of as an example as well. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.